Well, welcome to Geneva, and thank you very much for finding the time to spend with us. Liberal International is particularly interested to know, in these very difficult times when we're reading about President Duterte and his encouragement of mass crimes, frankly, we are particularly interested to know what you and your Commission is able to do about the situation and what help we can give. You now have this job in charge of the Human Rights Commission. It must be a real uphill struggle for you from everything we hear about President Duterte and his ways. How are you reacting to this? How do you feel you can combat this?
Well, first, human rights issues have always been a challenge in the Philippines.
True.
Mr. Duterte did not actually create impunity. He certainly improved upon it, leveled up, so to speak. But we've had major human rights issues since the time the Commission was established 30 years ago. But it's certainly very challenging. We have not seen this level of human rights violations since during the authoritarian period. In fact, it's quite unprecedented, the number of human rights violations, particularly extrajudicial killing, in terms of scale and pace. Over 7,000 people now have been killed in the last 7 months. That's 1,000 each month. And even during the dark days of martial law, we didn't have that many that had been killed. During the martial law period, those that were targeted were essentially political dissidents, those in the opposition. They were arrested or they were disappeared, so on. Now, the target of Mr. Duterte's campaign are what are ostensibly criminals. But, you know, as human rights advocates, every person is entitled to due process. Every person is entitled to a presumption of innocence. And that's what's being undermined every day in our country.
President Duterte said recently that he is rowing back on these extrajudicial killings, or not necessarily doing it himself, but encouraging others to do so. Can we believe what he's saying?
Certainly not. He himself has gone on record as saying, just believe 2 out of every 5 things I say. In the context of his statement on pulling back, it was really more about responding to the fact that there have been abuses in the way the police have been pursuing this, essentially because it's a large-scale operation involving thousands of police officers doing the dirty work. There have been cases where innocents have been killed, or in a particular case which had prompted him to make this call, there was an extortion racketeering event where a Korean national was essentially kidnapped, and a ransom was asked, and then he was killed anyway by police officers. So his view about the purpose of his campaign remains. It's just that he's now less certain about the control he has on the police. So he's slowing down, he's put the pause button, but he's now asking the armed forces that have not been trained to do law enforcement to do this dirty work. So that's the problem. What I see will happen is, of the 7,000 that have thus far been killed, essentially about 1/3 have been killed by police officers and about 2/3 by vigilantes. What's going to happen is we may see a decline in the killings perpetrated by police officers, but possibly the numbers of deaths caused by vigilantes may increase.
That is extremely worrying. Turning from the criminality part, what's worrying us a little bit is, for example, your predecessor, Leila de Lima, predecessor and then later as the Justice Secretary, they seem to be after her now. To what extent will they be attacking with trumped-up charges the opposition, and what will be the effect on Vice-President Robredo in all of this? she is presumably under some sort of pressure and attack as well.
Well, the whole government that's come to power in June last year essentially mandated sort of like a strongman law and order policy. And anyone that would criticize this are assaulted verbally. And Senator Laila de Lima is the staunchest opponent of this policy, having been chair of the Commission on Human Rights and Minister of Justice in the previous government. And she is fighting a lonely battle. And so what's happened recently, where trumped up charges are being made against her, is part of that vilification campaign against her and anyone else actually who would be opposed to the policy of this government. Mind you, it is a very popular government.
Yeah.
And people are actually sadly applauding what it's doing, which is ultimately undermining the long-term sustainability of democracy and rule of law in our country. And people like Laila de Lima need to be bolstered and strengthened. And of course, there's a necessary impact on the Vice President because she had resigned from the cabinet as a housing minister because of differences on policy with the administration, and is now leading the opposition. And we can anticipate that anyone who would speak to hold the government to account will be attacked and assaulted politically. And this is really the challenge of democracy in the Philippines right now. What I see happening is that if the countervailing forces are not strengthened and bolstered, whether these are the Senate, the opposition, the courts, civil society, the academe, if they do not meet up to the challenge, what we could see happening is that the trajectory of an illiberal democracy will take root in the Philippines. And some academics have already described the nature of the regime as a variant of fascism called Dutertismo.
Yeah.
And I fear that if the countervailing forces don't prevail, we might see a scenario where Dutertismo will outlive Duterte, such as Chavismo has outlived Chavez in Venezuela.
Is there anything we can do to help? In other words, Liberal International, you're a Liberal Party, is an extremely valued member of Liberal International. Is there anything we in our various manifests of liberalism throughout the world, be it through your regional organization CALD, be it Liberal International, be it ALDE party in Europe, is there anything we can do to help? Can we help you in any way, whatever? Obviously it's a national problem, but you say you want it bolstering. Is there any bolstering we can do?
Certainly. First, of course, we need to direct and light a torch on the issues that's facing the Philippines, as well as actually broadly Southeast Asia. What we're seeing really is a pushback of freedom and democracy, and we need to draw the line across the region, and hopefully the countervailing forces will overcome. We need to discuss the issues, the reimposition of the death penalty, accountability for human rights violations, for impunity, and every little bit helps. So persons in the Liberal International who are influential in their own governments, who are in cabinet, should be able to raise these issues about the Philippines. We're in Geneva now, and the United Nations mechanism should be utilized to their full extent. But yes, ultimately this is something that the people of the Philippines will need to take on themselves. human rights, freedom, democracy are far too important to allow them to be lost in a country like the Philippines. And I have faith that we will ultimately overcome, but not after some struggle.
Well, we have got a lot of political leaders around the world who are members of the Liberal family. It's our job as Liberal International to make sure that they are aware of what's going on. We need help from you to know, to be informed what's happening through whatever channels, but we will give you backing every bit of the way. Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. All the best. Thank you.